there's no one type of entity that has all the power in Bitcoin. It's delegated out. And there's different actors with different powers and different incentives that are operating as part of this consensus mechanism. And so the six groups are the first one is economic nodes, like you mentioned. The next one is investors, so people that hold significant amounts of it, or many people that hold smaller amounts of it. Then there's miners. Then there's influencers, anyone with a significant audience within the space. And then there's two types of developers. There's protocol developers, and then there's application developers. And for economic nodes, we made that distinction because, even though you could be running the same node software as someone else, some nodes are more impactful for the network than others by orders of magnitude. And it's largely related to how much volume that they're doing, and how much, impact they're having on what people define as Bitcoin. When they exchange one coin for Bitcoin or fiat for Bitcoin, those economic nodes, whether it's exchanges, brokers, payment processors, they're playing a pretty significant role. So, for example, what software,
notice that it's trending towards a little bit of like popcorn and drama, like on Twitter. And it just made me realize it's been a long time since the Bitcoin space has had a very contentious fork, and it was back in 2017. And I thought I had two thoughts. One, my knowledge on all of this forking and how all this stuff works was very rusty. I learned it well back then because there's a lot of content created and a lot of smart people describing it. And that's when I really went deep, but I hadn't thought of it for 7 years. So my knowledge is rusty, and I'm thinking probably most of my speculation on that is that they, like as an investor, you look for like, is there disagreement? Are people yelling and screaming? Who's against that change? Are they credible developers or credible thinkers in the space? What are their reasons? Do they seem sensible? Do they impact me? That's probably the mindset a lot of investors go through, as opposed to like deeply understanding the technical change. And with Taproot, there was essentially no like technical concerns from any developers. The only small amount of drama on Taproot was how to activate it, as opposed to like, should we activate it? And there's a little bit of drama, but it wasn't that.
But do you see that there's potential for, bad influence, for lack of a better expression, on, let's say, the media influencer class, on behalf of the investor class, for example? How do you guys look at that interplay as we go forward, kind of into a bit of an unknown territory in Bitcoin's adoption cycle?
Yeah, so I think what you say is undeniable and true, that the larger institutions on an absolute level have a lot more Bitcoin today than they did before. And over time, that's likely to continue to grow
into the other ETFs. And of course, there were net inflows, and they're up to something like 1 million plus coins now. But that's a 400,000 coin gain, which is not nothing. But it's not as though they're gobbling up vast amounts of the network. So I think that's where ratios do matter at the end of the day.
I think that's an important clarification. I appreciate the explanation from both of you on that, because I think that's the concern that a lot of people have voiced, that, okay, great, number go up, fantastic, all these institutions and governments hopping on board, but what does that actually mean in terms of the potential future decentralization and security of this network? Because the number go up is also tied to that. It's not going to be, Bitcoin's not valuable if it's not decentralized and secure. And so I'm curious what your thoughts on, just to take this one step further, what do you
things that say some of the people that want changes of the network, that they want, say, covenants, for example, will argue, because when people debate on should you make a change, should you not make a change, is it risky or not risky, one of the arguments they will generally use is that it's in some ways risky not to make a change if there's insufficient ability to self-custody, and therefore it helps coins move into a big consolidated pool. That's an argument that they would make. I'm not necessarily making it myself, but it is an argument that's out there. And those are the types of things I think about and monitor when I'm, say, providing analysis on Bitcoin for, like, investors that follow my work.
And You mentioned, Steve, that there was a scenario that you guys kind of walked through that was related to this. Now a good time to kind of get into that a little bit, maybe? Yeah, let's do it.
A little bit complicated, but Bitcoin with this new rule, what they see is anyone can spend. Meaning anyone can spend those coins, not just the private key holder. So it creates now the reason why like past soft forks haven't been vulnerable in this way or taken advantage of, it's because mining hash rate fully supports the change and never produces a block that unwinds these new rules. But if there's a large bounty created, let's say like $1 billion, miners, it becomes very attractive to miners, and at some threshold, miners will be like, let's collect severe. Such as mining the rest of the Bitcoin that have not been mined in a matter of a few months. That sounds outrageous, right? I'm sure most of your audience has never even heard of that. Probably thinks it's preposterous that I'm saying that, because if you can do that, why is it not happening? This particular attack, it's well known, it's been known for over 10 years. If it were conducted, it requires majority hash rate, 51% or more. It also, which again, it's a little concerning because one entity now basically has that power. But even if one entity has that power, it would be public information. The attack occurs between a difficulty adjustment epoch, so about 2 weeks, and it would become evident that the attack was underway at the beginning of an epoch, and it wouldn't actually be realized until the end. So we'd have this 2-week window. To fit out, technically, you need to write the software, you need to write tests, and all of that's code. So there needs to be a protocol developer involved. And so that's sort of where it starts. And then from there, the happy path, or like a path that's proven successful in the past, is then share that idea and that code and the benefits and risks with other developers, and ultimately get developer consensus. And then if you reach that point, then you can start spreading it to other stakeholder groups and the rest of Bitcoin. Like, hey, here's this proposed change. Here's the benefits. Here's the risk. Here's all the work.
Sure, and it obviously will depend on what stakeholder group that you're in. For a lot of people reading, like watching this podcast, probably disproportionate in the investor group, but I'm sure they're across the spectrum of all the different groups. And so you'd ask, things like, what are the specific benefits of this change that I would have? What additional features or safety or other aspects would I have that I didn't have before the change? That's kind of the key thing you start out with. You can ask things like, more broadly, even if it doesn't affect me, how does it affect, Bitcoin stability, security for other stakeholder groups that are, of course, indirectly relevant for me because we want a stable, functioning, appreciating network, because that'll, hopefully increase adoption. Then you can ask, like, who are there group
contributors to that project? So if anyone finding themselves passionate about this, we would love to hear your voice and see your contribution.
Yeah, we consider this the first draft of the project, basically our initial attempt to model this. And we got a lot of, it wasn't just us, we got a lot of reviews and feedback that was very helpful in coming up with this first version 1 draft. But it's only the start. So anything that people either disagree with or think could be clarified or improved on the current paper would be great. And then as Bitcoin changes, even if the paper is fairly accurate now, it could fall out of date if it's not up.
All right, actually, and then turned into a book many years ago about this, and I subscribe to that. I think just it makes logical sense that it will start. I mean, the kind of volatility and number go up that we see with any emergent store of value, it's going to limit its usefulness as currency. That doesn't mean it not zero, but it's just like not going to be broadly used currency until that's sort of played out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the milestones that I'm watching. So right now, the network's worth over $1.5 trillion. And so I think the milestones ahead are, one, can you become bigger than any stock, which is currently over 3 trillion? Then it's, can you be bigger than any monetary base, which would put you over 5, enough throughput and scalability that people can then start using it for those other abilities more. And I think, but in the meantime, it's it's an option that exists. It's a power user option that exists. And I think that's even important for the store of value. Like part of what makes Bitcoin valuable to me compared to like a stock I own in a brokerage is that I can literally take it with me, and any number of urban centers in the world, I can find a way to exchange it for local value one way or another, whether it's converting it into their fiat or converting it to goods and services or online. And that's one of the...
And thank you to folks in the live stream. I'm cutting you off right now. And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net/sponsor or send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net. If you are enjoying the Bitcoin Podcast and find it valuable,